Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of About to Build. And this week we're up to episode number 31. So in the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about the precursors that lead to business failure and what we can do to minimize the impacts and detect changes early enough to make adequate changes in our business. And that ASICS had nominated the top 5 causes for business failures. And those top 5 are inadequate cash flow, poor strategic management, trading losses, poor financial control, and today's topic, undercapitalisation. So this is where you don't have the funds or capital to conduct normal business operations. And this can occur when your company is not generating typically enough cash flow. So the answer to not having this is obviously to ensure you have a constant flow of projects, which comes down to being able to be the salesperson and the marketing within your business. I won't touch on how to get, these things happening in your business today, as we're just going to be talking about the undercapitalisation that may occur in your business. So I see in the building industry, this being quite a big issue, and the government definitely sees it an issue, and our clients see it as an issue as well. And it's then caused the government to put restrictions on how we conduct our business within the building industry. So typically, builders start their business by, they might have been a carpenter working for someone else. They get sick of working for someone else, think they might be able to do it better, or think that they'll be able to have, a freer life, make more money. And they typically throw the towel in and resign from their current employer and go home and tell everyone, I'm going to start my own business. So this is a very exciting period, as you're probably going, oh, now I've got this business, I need a new car, I need this U-Butte trailer, I need all these tools so I can look the part, so I can get the business. It's seen as part of your marketing. You want to put your best foot forward and you want people to see the best part of you. And this sometimes can be the initial downfall when a lot of small businesses start. So, you don't fully understand the initial costs that occur when you start your business. And when you build a home for someone, unfortunately, our contracts are written to ensure that at any stage our clients are not giving us money prior to the works being completed. We might get a 5 to 10% deposit depending on which state you're in, but this deposit typically will only pay for the preliminaries for that project or home. So this leaves us in a dilemma early on, and especially in our new businesses, when we realize we don't have enough cash in the bank to pay the bills that start stacking up, and they stack up very quickly. This is when you start having to delay payments, and mostly you'll start delaying these to your subcontractors. You'll start 1 day out, 2 day out, 3 day out. You've got them ringing you, when are you going to pay me? Yep, it's coming soon. The client's paying me soon. You don't, this is where they've brought in some regulations that for the government to regulate how we pay our subcontractors and when we have to pay them, because typically they're the ones that probably get delayed more so than maybe a supplier, because suppliers will give us accounts. So you've got a little bit more time. You've usually got the money in the bank before you might have to pay your suppliers. So one part of helping those builders deal with that and the incoming bills, obviously, is to make sure you've got trade accounts, that supply you things like the hardware store, the concrete suppliers in your area, plumbing and electrical suppliers. And it's important to get these trade accounts with the longest amount of days credit. So example, with Bunnings, you can get up to 60 days from purchasing to pay. So if you buy something tomorrow, being the 1st of September, you'll not need to pay for those materials till the end of October. So in effect, nearly getting 60 days to pay. But if you buy those materials today, being the 31st of August, you'll have to pay at the end of October, only giving you 30 days to pay. So it's important to be aware of the timing of ordering materials so that you can capitalize on these longer periods, so that by the time you need to pay for the materials, you should have got that money in from your client because you've got their home to the next payment milestone and you've got that money for them to be able to pay for the materials. But unlike the subcontractors and your employees, these need to be paid more regularly, such as weekly, fortnightly, and you as the business will require that cash, in effect capital, to be in your bank account to ensure you can keep your business running and open. So when builders start their own business, that won't usually, they won't usually have access to things such as an overdraft or a loan that you can access to help you in these times when you are waiting for those progress payments. So this is dependent on how well you've planned the start of your business. If you just decide one day you're throwing in the towel, you leave your employer, you're going out on your own, you may not have planned in advance to have the foresight to go and get access to a loan prior to not having the ability to prove your income to the bank. So, when you're still working for someone, it's easier to get a loan because you can show you're getting, a regular income. But as soon as you become self-employed, it becomes a whole lot harder to get a loan. They want 2 years worth of financials before they'll even give you some sort of loan, and they often won't even give you a business loan. Most of the banks now, might be able to get a personal loan or a personal line of credit over your own house, which is not ideal. It's probably something you don't want to do. And I always swear that I wouldn't do that when we had our business, because I didn't want my place of residence to be not secure, because I've mortgaged it up to the highest amount I can and then don't have access to any more funds. And if the business goes bad, potentially losing my home. So when we start to see the low that we haven't got enough cash and we can't foresee any projects coming in the near future or progress payments coming in, soon enough, we may look at what other options there are. And I briefly spoke about invoice financing in another episode. And these are usually things that have a high capital cost or a high cost to you. So this is where you get a company to pay the amount you've invoiced a client, and they'll charge you a percentage fee. And it's usually going to be a lot higher than, say, a bank loan fee. So this is where you invoice your client, so you're getting the funds, but they're not going to come through for a couple of weeks. This business will actually lend the amount less their fee. So say the amount's 20 grand for your invoice, they might give you $15,000 initially before, the client has actually paid you. But with this type of financing, it's a big red flag for clients and for other people. So I've seen suppliers do it, but the problem is, and the reason that they're doing this and triggers you to the fact that they may be having cash flow issues and maybe shouldn't be someone you might be dealing with, is because the bank details on their invoice gets changed to go to one of these financing companies. So the client, instead of paying you the cash, the $20,000, you actually pay that to this financing company. So, because they've already given you the money. So the client then sends the money to them. Otherwise, it's hard for that financing company, obviously, to get the money back off you, which the client's given you. So ensuring that you've set out your progress payments and getting to those stages as soon as possible will help your cash flow and your ability to have your money in the bank. So I've got a few things here. Oh, Larissa and Fu's even here today. How are you going? Yes, putting your house as collateral is dangerous, and I speak from experience. I lost a beach house once, and plenty of people do it, and plenty of people lose their homes, and I don't like to see that. So I like to be able to, give people the tools and the knowledge to put them in a place where they're not jeopardizing their own family home. And yes, however, sometimes there isn't any other way out, and I've had that happen to me where I haven't had an option other than to increase the mortgage on my house, but I'm still obviously paying that off. But I managed to get through that time that I needed it and can get everything under control. But, there wasn't necessarily the people to give us the information or let us know how to do things. The building industry typically doesn't have anyone that has the provides education on these types of things. and we just try and battle through. But if we had the information, we could plan a bit better and not have to battle as much as the industry typically does. So at the moment, the industry, I guess there's a lot of delays being experienced because there's material shortages, there's trade shortages, and you want to make sure that you can get your houses to the next progress payment to get that money. But if you haven't set the progress payments up, like we're sort of stuck with the progress payments that the bank, well, the contract dictates, and the bank as well. So the bank won't often let you change the progress payments. So, they just want it to be deposit, base, frame and close, final and fixing. You might be able to squeeze in there one more payment stage, something like site works. So if you may be doing a sloping block and there's a lot of site works that have to be done prior to even getting a flat pad to build a house off, they might accept this. But when you start putting in more than that, the bank is reluctant to then loan the money to the client because they don't want to have so many progress payments. So at the moment, there is the delays, and, we're having stages delayed up to 4 months. So some jobs, you might not be able to get a progress payment for 4 months. And this is putting pressure on businesses, and especially the businesses that might not have the capital to be able to carry not having a payment for so many months. So, it might be the tiler, you can't get the tiler there for the month. So everything is sitting there, but the client's pushing you to keep pushing forward. They might say, well, why can't you paint the house? Or why can't you do this? But that's then you spending more of your own money to fund their build, before you can get the money back from them. So it's a balancing act between what cash you have available, the money you need to get in, and not then spending too much of your own cash while you're waiting to get to that next progress stage. So it's a matter of having a discussion with your client and explaining to them, look, I would love to keep moving forward, but I can't keep spending my money on your project, especially if you've got 3 or 4 other projects going at the same time as well, and everyone's expecting that. You'll leave yourself short and you'll end up getting into trouble in your business. So it is important to have the data and to understand the work that is in progress. The timing of the payments coming in and ensuring that you make the strategic decisions on timing of your ordering of materials. So, if you are a few days short of the end of the month and you have a big order, you might want to order the roofing iron for the roof, delay that till the first of the month so you do get your 60 days to pay that bill. Make sure when you start your business, you do some planning before you start your business, and make sure you have, money saved up or you have access to a loan. I've spoken before about getting to the end of the financial year and seeing money in your bank account, and because you don't want to pay tax, you go on a spending spree. Keep that capital in your business. Otherwise, you're forever in a stressed state about your business. If you don't have that buffer, if you don't have that extra money in the bank, look at the overheads in your business. Look at what's necessary. Look at what is not serving well and cut those costs. Keep what is serving you well as long as you can. Say your car, having constantly leasing payments in your business, are they necessary? Keep that car for more years instead of renewing it every 3 years and having that constant overhead from a car lease when, there's nothing wrong with the car after 3 years. Pay it out and keep that car, and you're not having those overheads consistently in your business. So in today's technology world, there are so many options to streamline your business that may give you the ability to cut hours of staff and keep, more money in your pocket. Instead of having an admin person full-time, you may only need them part-time if you structure your business correctly and use the technology that's now available to you. So my programs go more into depth into these programs and technology, and also how to analyze the data to ensure you're aware of your business's position and when you may need to double down and get through the lean times. So having the ability to foresee this sort of coming gives you that peace of mind to be able to put something in place so that you smooth out those ups and downs. So Larissa says here, I guess each industry has its own specifics International export is so risky, but also with great returns. Yeah, and I mean, some builders actually, some of the bigger project builders actually import their own like materials. But at the moment, obviously with COVID, they're having issues because they can't get those things in here. So those builders are then now having to pay higher prices for things because they're having to get it locally, whereas before they might have been supplying, I don't know, their tiles in bulk from overseas directly. And again, with fixed price contracts, now they're suffering, you know, from that thing where they haven't got in their projects enough money to deal with things locally. So one thing I do within my business is, say I get a quote for the client wants specific appliances. So I'll get quotes from 3 different suppliers, and one might be, say for argument's sake, $1,000. Another one might be $1,200. One might be $1,300. I, in my pricing, allow the $1,300 option, because if when I go to order, I'm going to order the $1,000 from the $1,000 supplier, but if I can't get it from that supplier and I have to go with the more expensive $1,300 one, I've got that ability. I'm not losing that money. So it's just thinking about things and planning ahead so that you can ensure that your business, you know, does stay around for a long time and does give you the returns that you're after for the risk that you take. So until next week, keep powering your business and see you then.